Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in three ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast. On the podcast today, the Hockey IQ podcast, we bring on Lou Vairo. Did I pronounce that properly? Lou Vairo?
Yeah, that everybody says Vairo. It's not proper, but I go with it.
Okay. Fair enough. You're from Brooklyn, so if we ever go the wrong way, you'll straighten us right out.
I've been known to.
A lot of fun, but getting going here. So from the people I've talked with, you're kind of like the godfather of USA hockey. I'm curious why you think people call you the godfather of USA hockey.
I don't know. I never heard that before. Maybe because I'm from Brooklyn and they associate the Godfather with Brooklyn. I don't know, but I probably don't deserve it if it's meant as a compliment. I always looked up to others, Tom Lockhart, John Mariucci. To me, these were great leaders of USA hockey.
Well, you've been around a little bit. You were a coach with the first ever USA Hockey World Juniors, and that had to be an absolutely different experience than it is today. And curious how you see how that tournament's evolved, and just even more broadly, I mean, it's a youth tournament at the end of the day, how you've seen youth development change since the late 70s.
Well, first, no, I was assistant coach. Marshall Johnston was the head coach, and he was generous enough to select me to be his assistant. Of course, in those days, nobody knew what this tournament was or would turn into being, and nobody wanted to coach it. Marshall was Canadian born, and when USA Hockey, which was then called Amateur Hockey Association of the United States, they offered the position to many great former American players and current coaches at that time, and every single person refused. They didn't want to be away for Christmas from their family in Europe, and they went to Marshall, and Marshall was in fact captain of the Canadian national team as a player, went on to play in the NHL, have a successful playing career. He was a GM, director of player personnel, and one of the finest men you'll ever come across. Decent, good-hearted, just a very wonderful hockey man, very capable of doing anything. And he figured, since he had been living so long in the U.S. and working in the U.S., he couldn't say no. He wanted to be grateful, show his gratefulness, and he took on the challenge. And it was quite a challenge. He did a great job. I learned a lot, and I was happy to be under his tutelage. There were great players in that tournament, and the players we had weren't our most talented or best players. They weren't made available, but they were good players and they were great people, and we should all always be forever grateful to them for giving 100% in that tournament, which they did.
So you're probably watching some games currently as we're even recording here. It's a completely different game that we play nowadays from just even a decade ago. I'm curious, through your experience, how have you seen hockey evolve when you first got started to where it is today?
Well, there was a time, especially Canadians, where the game was often decided in the front of the net and the corners and in the alley before and after the game. There was a lot of very rough play. You could even say cruel play at times. And the American game was copying that, trying to. And the Europeans played a totally different type of hockey. They didn't play cruel hockey like that. They were very skilled and great physical shape, and especially the Eastern European countries led by the Soviet Union and then Czechoslovakia, they played very collectively, a real team game. I remember the great Soviet coach Tarasov said, if one can only see Bobby Hull once to know he's something beyond special. He's an amazing hockey player. And Bobby Hull could easily outplay any of our great Soviet players one-on-one. And he named some of the great Soviet players, Yakushev, Kalamov, Pirsov, and he said Bobby Hull would probably win one-on-one very easily. However, if two Kalamovs was playing against two Bobby Hulls and 3 or 4 or 5, then the odds change dramatically because hockey's a collective game. It's a team game. And our belief in hockey of playing collectively would almost always defeat individual stars playing on their own for themselves. And it was a very interesting observation he made, and of course it's something I thought a lot about. I think that, I disagree with you on this and many people. The game still has 2 nets. The idea is to defend yours and keep the puck out, attack the opponents and score. It still comes down to that. And that leads us to goalkeepers. I don't know how anybody scores goals today. These goalies, they all look like they're 6'5" with giant equipment, and they all look like cookie cutter goalies, cut out of the same mold. And it's really tough to score goals. It's not an easy task. I think that's where hockey's changed the most, is in the nets. And if you look at the statistics, which I don't do, I'm not a big believer in stats or analytics. They can be useful just like video, but you still got to play the game with people, and spirit and heart and compete, and individual determination and skills mean a lot. See, a lot of these jobs are created. A lot of these specialized coaching things have been created. You create jobs. Some people are so smart and clever, they've created an industry and and a career for themselves. And it still has to be the player who determines 90% of the game, not the coaches. The players, they're out there at war, and they have to decide it. But if you look at the stats, you'll notice that in every league, I don't care if it's the American Hockey League, the NHL, the Under-20 World Junior Championships, the NC college games, junior leagues, the Olympics, usually the team that ends up winning the championship, the one stat that I think is incredibly tale-telling is goals against save percentage, the save percentage stat. Usually the team that wins the championship has the goalie with the best save percentage. So to me, that's one stat that I do pay attention to. And if you think back just a few years when Brodeur, and we're talking the greatest goalies in the world right now, when Brodeur was red hot, the Devils won the cup. when Montreal and then the Avalanche were red hot winning cups, Patrick Waugh usually did have the best goals against percentage. And even the kid Ward, when the Hurricanes won it, I believe he had the best save percentage that year. So it's usually the team that goalie has the best save percentage in any league that wins. So that is an important statistic.
Yeah, and if I remember, the Soviets used to have a pretty decent goalie in Tretiak, so I think it matches up. Good goalie makes a lot of difference. And you mentioned there Tarasov, and it seems like you had a good relationship with him. So I'll let you explain how that even came to be, of getting to know just an absolute legend in the hockey, especially in the coaching community, and shaping how the game is truly played today. And you were obviously a part of bringing that over to the United States and North America.
Well, he predicted what you see today, and I'm pleased with it. I mean, I love watching the games. The NHL has gotten so much better over the past 10 years. You got to give credit to the Commissioner Bettman and his assistant, Bill Daly. They've done a great job. And of course, the ownership and all the people in positions to make it better. They really have done a great job. But Tarasov predicted, he told me, that someday you're going to see probably a World Hockey League that would have, and he wasn't in favor of that, by the way, that would have incredible players from all over the world playing at high speeds, collectively, intelligent hockey with coaches that really work at their craft. And he said it would be to the delight of the spectators. But if it was in the NHL, which it is, that's where it ended up, people would be cheated in other countries, but he didn't know about the TV we have today, and and all this stuff, and social media. It didn't exist then. But that was his opinion, and I shared that with him, and I thought so too, and I really hoped it would happen. And it has, and it's fun to watch. Now, I met him. I'm trying to put it all together because it goes back a long time, but I had no intention of being any kind of coach or making a living that I did make being in hockey. I had gotten out of the Army. I served 2 years. In those days, you got drafted. I'm proud to say I'm a veteran. I really appreciate having had the opportunity to represent my country. I'm a disabled veteran, and I'm very proud that I was part of something like that. I think it's missing in our lives today. I would love to see every young man and woman that's capable serve for a year in the service in some capacity and get trained. And because I sure learned discipline there. Thought I was a smart aleck kid from Brooklyn and had all the answers and was cocky a little bit. And after 6 months of the Army, it changed my life for the better. Turned me into a man. They did a great job. I will be forever grateful. And it helped me in my hockey career. But I didn't know I was going to have a career in hockey. I was just a guy from Brooklyn, just out of the Army. One day I turned the game on accidentally. I didn't even know it was a game on. It was ABC Wide World of Sports. And they said they'll be dropping the puck in minutes for the World Championship game here in Stockholm, Sweden. It was 1969, I believe. And in black and white on a Zenith TV with rabbit ears and aluminum foil on the top for reception and the picture shaking. I got to see one of the greatest exhibitions of hockey to that point that I ever saw. And it was, and I was a big hockey fan. I had season tickets at Madison Square Garden. I saved up enough money from a paper route to buy one. And because tickets were cheap in those days, and good seats too. Anyway, the Soviet Union versus Sweden. And the Soviets won the game, but both teams were just great. The skating and passing and collective play, it just appealed to me. It's and I had never heard of Tarasov, and they scrolled his name underneath and focused in on him, and I liked his face. It was the face of a kind person. He turned out to be a very tough, demanding coach, but he had such great heart and personality that you couldn't help but love the guy. And I wrote his name down. I was right next to a card table, and there was paper and pencil there, and I wrote his name down and put it in my pocket. I was at my grandmother's house. It was after church, and it was a Sunday, and the whole family was there, about 20 people. And I was bored, and I wanted to go home. I had already gotten my own little apartment in Brooklyn on Cropsey Avenue, right near Coney Island, and I just wanted to go home. And I was coaching, a volunteer Pee Wee coach, and I wanted to be better. And when I saw this hockey, I said, "Boy, would I like to learn that? How do they play like that?" So I wrote him a letter, and eventually mailed it. It was very expensive to mail. I didn't know about airmail and special writing paper and that. I didn't know any of that stuff. And anyway, I mailed him a letter. I didn't know who to address it to, but I had written his name. I knew he was the coach. So I said, "Coach of the USSR national hockey team, Moscow, Soviet Union, USSR." And I eventually mailed it. It was $5. I remember it was 3 days lunch money on my job. It was $5.34 to mail it. And months later, I actually got a reply from him, but with the right paper, so it was cheaper for them to mail. I got a reply in English. It was good enough English for me to make it out. The thing that stood out, would you believe I lost this in all the times I've moved, but boy, do I wish I had that letter. It was in green ink, red ink, black ink. It was unbelievable with a typewriter. And basically what it said is, "I hereby invite you to come to Soviet Union to participate with me in training sessions and see for yourself how we do things. Thank you very much for your kind compliment." But he wrote this, "But we know you Americans. When you compliment us, you steal." And that's exactly how he spoke and acted and talked. And anyway, I couldn't get the money to fly there, and I didn't know what a visa was, but he had told me I had to go to the Soviet consulate to get one, and it didn't happen. I mean, you needed about, in those days, $600 to get a plane ticket. I made $60 a week. It wasn't going to happen. And I was coaching and that. And I ended up coaching on one team, a midget age team, Bobby Francis, Emil Francis' son. Bobby went on to play in the NHL. He also was coach of the year in Phoenix. And he was a great coach. He hurt his back and had physical problems, which he still probably has. And he was a great kid and a great coach. But his father was an amazing man, and he's alive. He's in his 90s down in Florida. Emil was at the time the general manager, the vice president, and the coach of the New York Rangers. And I saw that the 72 U.S. Olympic team was playing the Soviet Red Army team, a six games exhibition throughout the States. And they played in Philly, Minneapolis, different places. And they were going to come to Madison Square Garden and play the U.S. Olympic team. So I went to AMO for Pennsylvania Plaza, Madison Square Garden, got an appointment to see him, went in and I said, "Can you help me out and get me tickets? I want to bring the whole team so they can see these guys play. I've seen them on TV. A few years ago, they were unbelievable." And he was fascinated, and he said, "Let me look into it, and I'll get back to you. Rita White was his secretary. Rita will give you a call." I said, thank you, Mr. Francis, and I left. I had a job. I was working. And we had been working in Manhattan, so I was able to get over there to the Garden, and the Rangers were home, so he was very kind. He saw me. Well, he got me the tickets for the whole team, and he wouldn't charge us anything. They were gratis, which was appreciated. And I took the team. We watched the game. It was ended up, I think, 12-3. They had a young goalie in the nets. I think he was 18 years old, Tradiak. And they had their stars, and they even added a few players. And Tarasov was coaching. And I asked Emil Francis if you can get me through security, I want to meet him. So you see if he remembered the letters and that. And he did. He said, I've been waiting for you. And we had a great visit. He re-invited me, and in 72, I got to go. I got to go there. And I got to meet him and spend time with him, and made many trips after that, brought him to the States many times, knew his daughters, his grandson. In fact, I just got a letter from Tatiana, his last living daughter. She's a famous figure skating coach. I had dropped her an email because I read that she had gone into the hospital. She wrote me back a beautiful note, and she's fine now, and she's back home. And his grandson, Alexei, who runs a program that Anatoly Tarasov initiated in Russia probably 40-some years ago, called the Golden Puck. It's like a grand house league across the nation that parents run, apartment building owners run. They put teams together, they make outdoor rinks, and the kids play, and it comes down to they have play downs till they get to Moscow for a national championship. And now his grandson, Alexei, does it. And it's great. And his great-grandson, Fedor, I watched him play a game. He's probably 10 or 12 now. Saw him play just a week ago. Somebody sent it to me streaming, whatever that is. But I clicked the buttons, and I watched little Fedor play hockey for the Red Army team. So the name Tarasov continues. And he was a big influence. I would need 20 hours to explain some of the things that I learned from him and how I think he influenced the world. I'll tell you one thing. Shame on Russian hockey, because what they play now is nothing compared to what they played under him and the other many great hockey leaders and coaches they had for years. They don't play Soviet hockey anymore. And Tarasov told me, never copy. Never copy. You come here, you watch what we do, how we do it. Don't copy. What you need to do, Lou, is pick out the principles that you think are really good and then make them your own, because your culture, your people are different than our people. Each country is uniquely different culturally, and to copy will be to always be second best. Don't copy. And be creative and feed the needs of your culture. In other words, what the type of culture the kids grow up in. And I followed that advice. And we don't copy Canada. We quit copying Canada in 1978. Because when I did come to work for USA Hockey, they had Hal Trumbull, he was executive director, and Kathy Figenshaw, his assistant. And when I came on, we had no money. My salary was $9,000 a year. And we had no money. And we struggled. And Kevin Allen was a very clever writer for USA Today. He said, USA had more men on the moon than we had players and coaches in the NHL. Could you imagine that? And so we had a clean slate to do something, and it was very uncomfortable for me. I played roller hockey with the Mullins. not the kids, the old man, Tom. We had no rinks in Brooklyn when I grew up. So we had to, it was very hard for a lot of old time people to accept some of the things I was trying to push with USA Hockey in those days. Everybody said there'll never be players from anywhere but the Northeast, Northern Michigan, and Minnesota. And I said, no, that's not true. I would have been in the NHL if I had rinks and grew up in those places. All you need are rinks, and anybody can play hockey. It doesn't matter where you're from. Russians, Soviets play, Czechs play, Slovaks play, Finns, Swedes. Anybody can play if you have the opportunity. So a lot of programs I was involved in at the beginning were I was assigned we had the beginnings of a coaching program that a great volunteer named Ken Johansson, and before him another great one, Murray Williamson, both born in Canada, came to the U.S. and spent their life in America and contributed greatly. So we if you're a native-born American, you should be grateful. If you're in hockey, you should be grateful to our brothers from Canada because they gave us a lot. I just didn't like the type of hockey they were playing in those days, so I kind of directed our hockey in a different direction with a lot of people ticked off at me. Native-born Americans, Canadian guys living down here. But I want them to understand they gave and did a lot. I just thought skillful, intelligent, disciplined, collective hockey was better than fist fights, spearing, all that kind of stuff. The Don Cherry world. I like Don Cherry personally, and that I really do. And sure is entertaining, but I didn't like that kind of hockey. So anyway, the U.S.
I'm curious how you went about creating that program. So you started with no rinks. You're trying to build up USA Hockey. What were some of the first programs or things that you enacted?
No, here's what happened. I had already adopted dry land training in I don't know, 1971 maybe, in New York City, in the Greater New York City Ice Hockey League, which I was a founding member of, and it's still in existence and going great guns. I didn't work yet for USA Hockey. I didn't come there till 1978. So I was a volunteer coach. I had a regular job. I was putting air conditioners in, working for Bart Grillo, who started the roller hockey leagues. He was great guy. He's passed since, a wonderful man. And I didn't dream as a kid, I dreamt of playing for the Rangers and the Yankees. But then you go to the Army, you get slapped around, you learn what life is really about. You come out and you realize, hey, I got to work. I had a really nice girlfriend I liked, and I figured I would save up money and open up a pizzeria. We'd probably end up with 6, 7 kids. And that would be my life. She would raise the kids and cook at home, and I'd run the pizzeria. And that's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking of, I'm going to try to change hockey in America. It was not the slightest thing in my mind. And what I was doing was coaching kids in the neighborhood that I knew and stuff like that. It was fun. And we had fun. It cost us money to be volunteer coaches. We didn't get paid or anything. And we did it the best we could. And so one day, after a number of years doing that, in 1970, about 1974, I get a call. Keith Crawford calls me. He was from Lake Placid. He was a real good player, but I'd coached his son Bobby for 4 or 5 years as a young kid. He ended up playing for the Rangers. He played in the NHL, Bobby Crawford. He played on that first junior national team. A heck of a player, great skill. He's still working in New York, teaching at Pelz's private rink, the skill development for players. Anyway, Bobby, father, Keith calls me and he says, Lou, this is Keith. Listen, you want to come to Minnesota and coach in the junior league? I said, what junior league? He said, the Midwest Junior League, which today is the USHL. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. Well, he said, it's in Austin. And I thought, I didn't connect it with, I thought I was going to Texas. And he said, it's in Austin. It turned out Austin, Minnesota. And I just spoke yesterday. He called me to wish me a happy Christmas. He's about 86 now. Jim Weber. He was the president of that team. Imagine that. He still lives in Austin. And he was maybe the first president of the USHL Junior League. So anyway, Jim, I get it. I said, do they pay you? He said, yeah. I said, how much? He said, a lot. I said, well, yeah, I'd consider it. You know, I would. So a guy, Lynn McAllister, unfortunately passed on. He called me, told me he was the GM, and that Bobby Crawford, the kid, he's their star player, and he recommended me. So I said, well, what does this all mean? He said, well, you know, this was in April. He says, you got to come in June for tryouts and pick the team. And we have a tryout camp in Golden Valley, Minnesota. And I said, how do I live? He says, oh, we'll set you up with a place to live, telephone, a car, and we'll pay you $40,000 a year. I said, what? $40,000 a year. So of course I was going to go. I mean, I'm making $60 a week. And, you know, my rent had just been raised to $115 a month. I needed to do something. So I said, I'll take it. He said, well, Mr. Weber is going to call you. He called me the next day. He said, I understand Lynn threw big numbers at you. I said, what's the deal? In the meantime, I had been talking to Emil Francis for advice. And Emil had said to me, they offered you what? The guy said 40,000. He says, hell, I'll take the job. and then Jim called me the next day, told me Lynn got all confused. And he said, there's no car, there's no house, nothing. You can rent the place and we'll pay you $2,000 a year. That's all we can afford. We lost $35,000 last year. And we're just citizens in this town of 25,000 people that want to provide a fun sport for the local community. So I called Emil and he said, well, you got a big decision to make. Remember, you can eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as well as filet mignon. You want to be a coach? It's a good league, Lou. We actually scouted. I think if you want to be a coach, you need to do that. So I accepted and went out there. I still didn't get the job, but I had to go out to the tryouts and that. And I don't know. The players were good players and good kids. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. But finally, Jim was real nice. And then I didn't know if they wanted me. And then Jim said, I want you to come. And it was a last place group. Some of the same kids were coming back and they had housing in those days. But the head coach was a famous guy the year before. He lived in the Twin Cities. He didn't want to live in a little town. And so he would just drive an hour and 20 minutes every day down for practice and back up. But he wasn't in town to control the behavior of the players. And I was dying to be able to have all that time to train the players, 6-7 hours a week of on ice practice and off ice practice. I couldn't do that in Brooklyn. Kids lived too far away and ice time was expensive. We only had an hour a week practice, so there's not a lot you can do. Well, anyway, cutting the story short, I ended up taking the job at the tryout camps. It was in June. I said, July 5th training camp starts. And there was an uproar. 3 kids quit. Good players. They quit. Okay, quit. So we only had about 16 kids when we opened training camp, and there was already rumbling, and they didn't like the idea of brutal dry land training. I said, listen, we finished in last place last year. That's where we finished. One thing we can do, we can't create talent, but we can make sure you're in the best shape of your life. You're explosive in your speed. You're strong in the upper body, lower body. It won't cost anything. And other than we're going to practice twice early in the morning because most of you need to get part-time jobs. And in the evening, when it cools down, we're going to practice another 2.5 hours. And if you want to leave, leave. I don't care. And nobody left. Two threatened, Walt Kyle, who became famous, and Mike Stoltzner, and just spoke to them over the Christmas break 40-something years later. Anyway, these kids committed themselves. And a lot of the team were cuts from the St. Paul Vulcans, Bloomington Junior Stars, a lot of them. And they worked so hard. I mean, they were unbelievable kids. And as soon as late September, early October came, we could skate twice a day on the ice. And I noticed that one day at practice, there were strangers in the stands. The only one I recognized was John Mariucci, because he had come down to see me a few days earlier. I hadn't seen him on TV. Bill Chadwick used to interview him between periods of Ranger North Star games. And John, this big, strong, powerful guy with a good smile, and he had an Italian face, and he was. His mom and dad were from Italy. And he came up to me and he started speaking in Italian to me. Put his hand out. I shook his hand. I understood him. And I said, I saw you on TV. And then I got to really know who he was. He's the godfather of hockey in Minnesota and one of America's greatest hockey people. Anyway, John was so kind to me. And I waved to him up there. And he came down. I said, who are those guys? He said, oh, it's Herb Brooks and Warren Strelo. He was a very big guy, a goalie. Became a great goalie coach. And Jack Bladwick. I said, who are they? And he told me who they were. I didn't know what the M was. Minnesota, University of Minnesota, you know. The U, not the M, the U. I didn't know stuff like that. But anyway, I got to know those guys, and they liked the way we trained. And these were not Tarasov drills or European drills. The inspiration for them was, but he told me not to copy, and I never did. And then I found out I could make my own drills. I shouldn't be afraid to think of things myself. Those are all influences from Tarasov. And so anyway, we went on that year to have a great season and end up winning the national tournament and championship. And it changed hockey in the United States of America. This was 1976. And then Herb called me and asked me to bring my team up to play the Gophers JV team every Monday night. And we would. And this way he could watch how we played and what we were trying to do. And he loved it. He had played against Tarasov coach teams as a player with the U.S. national team. So it wasn't something he didn't know or see, but his team at the U weren't playing like that. They played Philadelphia style. Paulie Holmgren was on his team, and great guys, great players. But they played what was popular in the NHL. And if I made any contribution at all, it was the fact that I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't looking to be some kind of coach or anything. I was just fulfilling my fantasies, dreams of why hockey should be played a certain way. And I noticed that it was embraced by my team. We got killed our first game. I wanted to quit and go home. I said, what am I doing to these kids? Oh, my God. We got killed 13-5. Doug Woog's Vulcans beat us in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. And all these people came out to see this new style of hockey. And who's this guy from Brooklyn who never played at any kind of level? What's going on? You know? And I was devastated and felt bad for my players. I thought, but there were things that worked in that game. And I did see some positives, but I said, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm ruining these kids' lives. They want to get college scholarships. And I was sitting in my little place, and one of the players knocked on the door, and I just got a Christmas card from him last week. Great guy named Mitchell Corbin. And he said, Coach, walked in. He said, what are you doing? He said, smile. I said, I can't. I said, Mitch, I'm thinking of quitting. I think I've destroyed you guys. I hope I haven't. I can't do this selfishly for myself and cost you guys scholarships and that. You work so hard. And he said, oh, aren't you the guy that made us work like animals in dry land training and all this? He said, Coach, I've never felt better in my life. Don't get down over one game. We play him again tomorrow night. You better be on the bench. He said, don't get down. And I think he said something to the team. Anyway, we played him at home, and we had, for us, a big crowd, about 1,200 paid people, and we beat them 9-0. And we won 7 or 8 in a row. We won the league. We won everything. And it probably changed my life, Mitch's little pep talk. So anyway, it exposed to a great hockey community, Minnesota, the greatest in America. It's a great state for hockey, and great hockey people saw it, like Herb Brooks and Dave Peterson. I didn't know these people. Later in years, I worked with all of them. I loved them, respected them. But it got people talking, and whenever we played on the road, especially in the Twin Cities, there'd be much bigger crowds than anybody ever expected. And hockey people were very interested to see what's this maniac doing. And when I went to work with USA Hockey, I knew kids could play from anywhere if given the chance. And I said, we need to expand, and the Olympic Committee worked with us. It wasn't HAUS, which is now USA Hockey, that started the summer development camps. It was really the Olympic Committee. Colonel Miller and Fayette Tutt, who was president of the Broadmoor Hotel, vice president of the IHF, and president of AHAUS, USA Hockey. And the Olympic Committee thought it would be good if we would take our best 15, 16-year-olds and have a summer camp for 1 week, and they would pay for it and everything. And the first one was in Squaw Valley, California. It doesn't exist anymore. Home of the 60 Olympics. It was a half built into a mountainside and half open rink. But they had the Olympic dorms and all that, so we did. We had our first camp. We brought the Pacific District players that were at that camp. One in particular was a young little skinny defenseman from San Diego at the time, although he grew up in Chicago. His name was Chris Chelios. And you could see this little skinny bugger was going to be something. Was he ever a tenacious, competitive, tough little kid? And other players. I don't remember their names, but they could skate, they could play. There was even a couple of kids from Alaska, and they were pretty decent. And I said, my God, I'm only working at USA Hockey 3 weeks, and I'm saying to myself, my God, these kids can play. I know in Brooklyn we got players who could play. We got to steal this idea, and it took a long time. I was in the office of my boss every day. Every day. There were only 4 employees. Every single day, Hal, we got to have a camp, a national camp, that we get players from every district we have, plus Alaska, even if it's one kid, and we bring them in. and we give them a chance. They'll learn, they'll go home, they'll share stories. Uh, Hockey will grow as the NHL expands, the AHL expands, college hockey expands. The game is going to become popular everywhere. Someday we'll have players from California, Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, uh, Iowa, you name it, Mississippi. We'll have players from everywhere. We just got to hope the game expands, rinks get built, and we invite players, even if they're not good now. Look 20, 25 years down the road. I believe we're going to have good players from many, many places, not just Minnesota, Michigan, and New England. And that's exactly what has happened. And Hal finally gave in. Fayette Tut supported it, raised the money, and we did it. And we got more players in the NHL now, and coaches and presidents and general managers, scouts, than we do people on the moon. So it took a long time. And one of the thrills for me is to watch this under 20 and see the players that I see and see them in the NHL. And the coaches, they're so great. Our GMs, everything. It's wonderful. It really is. We're better
really
than
is.
Russia now. We're better than Russia. I wish I could say we're better than Canada, but I at best, we're very close, if not equal. But we're better than these countries now. And we can win at any level, with any age group, they can too, but we're at least, let's say, I shouldn't brag. Let's say we're highly competitive. And I love every minute of it. I'm getting old now. In 2 months, I'll be 77. I want to live long enough to see more achievements.
Well, I'm curious about the first big achievement. I'm assuming you may remember 1960 being a big team and winning gold there, and how good those players were for USA hockey. But more specifically, just Herb Brooks, admiring your team and how you guys played led into an interesting role with the 1980 team, because you were officially on the staff there. And if I remember correctly, you guys were the first team to use, I think it was a walkie-talkie, or basically communicated from up in the stands down to the bench.
Yeah, here's what happened. I was coaching the junior national team, and Herb had asked me, because he would talk to me from the sports festival on. Every once in a while, I'd get a call from him. I'd say every week, 10 days. He'd ask me about players. Have you seen the U play yet this year? I said, I did. You think there's anybody there that could play on our team? I said, yeah. Tim Harris off to a great start. He's banging in goals. And, of course, Aaron Broughton is a great player, Neil's brother. Anyway, so I got to get back to this. I'm on my way to the games were in where were the games? I don't even remember where they were now. But I'm going to Europe, and I stopped to fly to Colorado Springs, to Denver, to Montreal. Drive down to Lake Placid. We had the pre-Olympic tournament. The B team of the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, and Sweden. Herb had asked me to stop, take a look at the team, see what I thought. So I stopped, and I'm there watching, and I noticed something against Sweden, how they were breaking out and doing something, and it was drawing both. One of their forwards was sucking two of our defensemen out of the offensive zone. So that gave them a 4-on-3. All they had to do was find the open guy, pass it to him, and they walked out of the zone. So I mentioned it to Bob Fleming, who was in charge overall of the program. And I said, Bob, tell Herb this is what the Swedes are doing. You might want to think about talking to the defenseman and just telling one to go with that guy, not both. And because the guy would skate, let's say he skated out on his right wing side, and the defenseman panicked and went with him. But then he went to the other side, to the other defenseman on the other side of the rink, and got him nervous, and he left the blue line, so it was working for them. So he said, write it down, write it down. So I sketched it and wrote it down quick. And then Herb came out of the dressing room and called me down. He said, come on down there. And we went in the corridor, and he said, what exactly are they doing? And I showed him. He said, great. And you think we should do that? I said, yeah. He said, so do I. I said, good. And they did. It made the adjustment. That was it. No big deal. But then after the World Junior Tournament, he called me and he said, talk to Bob Fleming. He's got to clear it with some group, and I'll talk to Hal Trumbull are you coming to the Olympics in Lake Placid? I said, yes, it's part of the federation. I am. I'm going to be making tea under the stands for all the teams all day long. I had to go buy these big kettles and stuff, tea with honey, you give them in between periods. And it was a full-time job. And so many teams playing. So, and that's the European way. You had to be good hosts. We don't do that, but they did it. I think we ate oranges or chocolate bars or something. But anyway, Herb said, I talked to Fleming. He's going to get a walkie-talkie. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to be our advanced scout. Sweden comes in, and they got 2 exhibition games lined up. Hal's going to make you the team host. You'll meet them at the airport in New York, and then stay with them. They're going to play Dartmouth and somebody else. I can't even remember who else it was we played. I said, okay. Then he said, we play them first, so I need a good book on them. You'll have 10 days and 2 games and all their practices to know them inside and out. I said, do you know the coach? I said, yeah, very well. Tommy Sandling, good guy. He said, you willing to do it? I said, yeah, we don't have a budget to pay or anything. I said, I work for the Federation. I'm a hockey guy working for USA Hockey, and that's okay. That's fine. I'm going to be there anyway, and it'll be fun for me. And he said, good. And he said, then there's a tournament in Montreal, Czechs, Canadians, I forget the other team. He said, I need you to go to that game when you're done with the Swedes, and then shoot down at the Placid, and we'll talk. And then during the games, you advance scout our opponents each game. Said, I'll be happy to do that, Herb. And that happened. And I'd come down after each period. I had a little booth. It's no longer there, by the way. I sat in this little booth, and in the final game against Finland, you know who sat in the booth with me? There were 3 secret agents with rifles, sharpshooters. They were laying on metal beams above, and Vice President Mondale. And when we won the gold medal, Mondale ran up to me. He's a really nice man. Oh my God, what a nice guy. Vice President. And he gave me a big hug and everything. And I hugged him, and he said, this is so great, so great. I said, I can't believe I'm hugging you. I never voted for you, but I'm hugging you. And he's just a good egg about it. And we ended up winning the gold medal. And Herb Brooks was a great hockey coach. He could have been governor, senator from Minnesota. He could have been president of the United States. He was a brilliant coach and a strange guy, especially in those days. And then I worked with him. He asked me if I'd help him officially. See, I was unofficial. I wasn't in the photos or anything. My job was unofficial. I couldn't care less. And then in 2002, he took the Olympic team again, which was another great move by USA Hockey. And he called me and asked me, he said, could you fly to Minnesota? They're going to do this announcement. I want you on my staff officially this time. I said, sure, as long as my boss will let me. And my boss was Doug Palazzari, and he approved it. And so I got to work with Herb Brooks twice, and that's a gold and silver medal. I got to work with Bob Johnson probably 7, 8 times, Canada Cups, and an equally great coach. People always say, who's a better coach? I said, neither. They're our 2 greatest coaches. They're fantastic. They were fantastic coaches, great leaders, great hockey men. And when you throw names in there, you got to think of people like Tim Taylor, especially I think of Dave Peterson was a superb coach. Bobby O'Connor. We had a lot of great coaches in those days. And I was just happy to be a part of any of it. It really was. I mean, again, I could have been flipping pizzas on McDonald Avenue in Brooklyn with a fat wife and about 6 kids busting my chops. So, which would have been fine too for me. But this turned out to be a miracle for me. I don't know about miracle on ice. Like, who am I? You know, that I got to do all those great things and develop programs. And, you know, I'm going to take credit while I'm on here. And I know a lot of people don't like ADM, but the ADM program, it wasn't called that. And I have all the written proof. I have the brochures. Was really started in 1979 in the form of age-specific training methods, coaching methods for our young hockey players, and was mailed to every coach in the country. The whole program, it took me one day on a Saturday to write it out, 3 different age groups, specific age groups. And that went to should have gone to every coach in the country. And it had cross-ice hockey, lending equipment, a parent's code of conduct, the player's code, off-ice training. It was a lot of information, but it left a lot of room for each coach to be an individual and come up with his own methods and ideas, just like Tarasov taught me. Don't copy. This was not meant to be something every coach should copy, but to use as a guidance, take it, and then make it even better. And so a lot of wonderful things, the diversity. People are big on that now everywhere. There was nothing new. And it wasn't done because of race when I was involved in it. It was, again, opportunity. I noticed that in poor neighborhoods, kids weren't playing. In minority neighborhoods, people of color, they weren't playing, and they didn't have rinks or they didn't have opportunities. Why shouldn't we as a governing body do everything we can afford to do to invite those kids into our programs? And I learned that doing that was in 1967, the first year of the Greater New York City Ice Hockey League. I was running a practice at Central Park, Woolman Arena, or whatever the name was then. And there were kids of color on the boards leaning on their elbows, watching all these kids on the ice, which I believe, I can't remember, probably all white, mostly white. And I skated over to the kids and I said to them, "Hey, you guys like hockey?" And they all shook their head, "Yeah." "Did you want to give it a try?" They shook their head, "Yeah." I said, "Don't leave. Wait till this practice is over. I want to talk to you guys." So the practice ended, blah, 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 about 8, 9 kids, I guess. I called them over. We sat on a couple of park benches, and Bart Grillo was there. He ran the league, and he was the guy who started all this. And I said, "Bart," and I worked for him in air conditioning. I said, "Bart, come here. These kids want to play." They said, "Some of them can't speak English real well. They just came from Puerto Rico a year ago. But they all want to try hockey. They don't have the $15 to sign up, and they don't have equipment. Can we do anything to help them?" He said, "You know our motto, we'll never turn a kid away, period." And he said, "Yeah," he said, well, he said to me, "Start organizing tomorrow night. We'll have a meeting and get used equipment and we'll clean it up. Use my mother's garage, we'll clean it up and fix it and that, get it to them. And the $15 is not a problem. I'll get 2 air conditioning competitors of his, the Katz brothers. He got them to chip in $100 to cover the cost of the kids playing. And some of those kids I'm still in touch with. One was a 9/11 hero. He's a retired Hector Rivera, fire chief. and Kenny Boys, guys are retired police officers and detectives and everything else. They all turned, then their kids played, and now their grandkids are playing. Imagine this. So there's your diversity, and why it's not a hard thing to do to reach out and to be kind to fellow citizens and humans, and just sell the game of hockey to everybody. Those are things that happened, and then now you know how I got involved. No thought of ever doing it. Even as I got to coach an Olympic team in '84, it wasn't even, I was on the committee to find a coach. Nobody wanted to coach.
It was a tough act to follow up, that was for sure.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't, I was going somewhere else to be an assistant coach in the NHL. And I was on my way, and I was getting working papers done in Canada and everything. And Art Berglund came to me, and I think Ron DiGregorio, and they said, we can't find a coach. I said, you ask so-and-so's. Some of these guys are still around, and some of them are really famous and great hockey men. And they were good coaches. I didn't think I was ready to do something like that. And I wasn't worried about the following in. I was worried about, does my wife want to move temporarily to Minnesota for a while, then go back? And, you know, it was a screwed up year, you know? And I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't know if that was going to work. But I did know the players. And we had 2 years to prepare if I'd agree. And I looked at the depth chart, and I remember sitting with Art Berglund, who was a great hockey man. He's dead now a year. And I said, Art, what do you think? He said, well, I think you should do it. You owe it to the organization. We need you. You know, you've coached the junior national team, so you know the players. Even the ones that didn't play for you, we couldn't get them, but you scouted them and you knew who they were, how they play. I said, that's all true. And Ron said that too. Well, we looked at the depth chart, and I said, we should be pretty good in goal. If I was rating them right now, I would rate Van Beesbrook, Barrasso, and Berend. And I hear this kid Mason is pretty good up at UMD. And defense, I said, there's young Chelios and young Hirsch. They're young, but they're pretty good players. Ludwig, Phil Housley, you know, all these players I named. The same with about 15, 16 guys who didn't want to wait 2 years. They got worn down by the NHL GM and their agents to sign. And they did. So we didn't get any of them. But we got Chelios. And the only reason we got LaFontaine was Al Arbor. It was so smart. And Bill Torrey. And they said, wouldn't hurt the kid. You know, we got a Stanley Cup team here, won about 3 cups. Wouldn't hurt him to get a little more experience. We don't desperately need him yet. He's still only 19. So anyway, that's how that happened. So you see, life is coincidences, I guess, or things happen out of nowhere. I'm grateful I've been able to be a part of it all, and I hope I did make good contributions. And I know that Tarasov was 100% right in his thoughts about the future.
Well, it's amazing how you've been at the center of the web for a lot of these things. If I remember correctly, you actually worked with Lou Lamoriello and Bob Johnson on a committee once as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, and Lou Lamoriello was part of the selection committee for the '84 Olympic team. He did a great job. He's probably the greatest. I don't know of a better executive who's done a better job than that guy in the NHL. He's really something, very talented, hardworking, driven. He's older than me, and the man doesn't stop for a minute. he was great. He helped with Ronnie Wilson coaching. They led the U.S. to that wonderful victory over Canada in Montreal. What did they call that? Something Cup? Was it? I don't remember the name of it now. What a team we had. And what a good job the coaches did, and Lamoriello putting it all together. I wasn't involved in that, except, I coached Ron Wilson. You know what I mean? Lou Lamoriello, when he's with the Devils, he asked me to come back because I had been with the Devils, and he flew me in and asked me to come back, and couldn't do it. My wife didn't want to live in New Jersey. That's the truth. She just didn't want to. And so I treasure all those friendships. And a story about Lamoriello. When I brought Tarasov, Chernishev, and Horsky to the U.S. for 18-city tour in '79, strictly dryland training. Horsky did the goalies. Under 20 was Tarasov, and under 16 or 15 or something like that was Chernishev. We went to 18 cities in the country and showed, and the turnout was incredible. Coaches, even from Canada, came, and we had local kids as demonstrators. They were fabulous. But it's a highlight of some of those kids' lives. And that was the official introduction to the country of how they do dryland training in Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia. And they were the two leading countries at that time. Then Sweden and Finland came along, and we came along, and I'm sure Canada is doing it. I know they are. And so we're in Providence, at Providence College, big turnout, and we're doing the clinic. And Lou, of course, was a spectacular host. Everything was organized to a T. And he said, we're all going out after this last session. Clean up, go back to your hotels, guys, clean up, and I'll send a vehicle to pick you all up, and we're going to the hill to my favorite Italian restaurant. And we all got in there, sat down. It was so much fun. And Lou was sitting next to a tree. Like, in some of those flower pots, they have big, not big, but they have trees in restaurants. And he's sitting there. And then Tarasov began, because when he showed up, he had one change of clothes and his workout stuff. That's it. And the suitcase had a rope around it, a belt, so it wouldn't break open. And when he opened it up in the first hotel room we went to, he opened it up. He had 42 bottles of vodka he brought with him. Could you imagine? One pair of underwear at 40 for 18 cities. So then we went to every place we went to, restaurants and everything, he would have a couple of bottles of vodka under the table. So he would order through the translator, who's alive. I still keep in touch. Both of us keep in touch. Lev. He said, Lev said, okay, to the waiter, I need, I don't know how many of us there were there, 9 or 10. I need only empty glasses without water. The guy shrugged. He said, all right. So he brought and then Tarasov would go under the table, reach under and pull out the bottle and start pouring drinks. And Lou's not a drinker. He's not going to drink shots all night long as straight vodka, So Tarasov wasn't easy for him. He was getting older and he was quite heavy. He got up to his feet and he would make a typical Cold War Soviet toast to brotherhood, peace, friendship, all that, and then drink. And Russians do their elbow out and they lean their head back and they drink it. Well, Lou would throw it in that potted plant. He couldn't drink, then make believe he had just drank it. But by the end of the night, we were there 5 hours. By the end of the night, we couldn't breathe. We were so full. The food was really good. Lou was the only one in control of himself, and the tree was dead. The leaves were folded up and looked like a weeping willow. It was dead. And then the bill came. Oh, it was tremendous. And Lou said to me, Louis, I'll never forget it. Look at this bill. I can't pay this. The school would kill me. I said, don't worry about it. The turnouts have been 60% more than I thought. We're not only going to present great clinics across the country, but we're going to make money on it. And I kept track every single receipt bill, and it was almost all cash. And I had my little briefcase, and I was carrying around. By the end of the trip, I had about 30 grand in cash. And I called Hal Trumbull. I said, listen, these guys did an incredible job. Can I give them a bonus? He said, well, where are we at? We figured to lose 10,000. I said, no, we're going to make a minimum $25,000. I said, it's unbelievable, Hal. He said, really? He said, of course you can. So I gave each of the three coaches, I don't know how much it was, I think it was 2,000 each, and 1,000 to the two interpreters, Charlie the Czech and Lev. And Charlie I spoke to last night. He called me to wish me a Merry Christmas and that. And we were reminiscing and laughing about it. But I think all these things changed hockey. I'll tell you, at these seminars we did with these guys, yes, Bob Johnson was there, Herb Brooks was there, Glenn Samore was there, other coaches, I can't remember all their names. They flew in from Canada to go to these things. And you know what the fee was? $15 a coach to get this kind of information. That's all it was. And we made
unbelievable.
Money.
What a deal.
And we made money. Yep. And you know what else it did? It put us on the map of respectability. All of a sudden, Czechoslovakians respected American hockey and what we were trying to do. Soviet Union respected us. They still do to this day. The respect spread. And I did things like that with Sweden and Finland and Poland and Germany. You could learn from everybody. Italy. There's good players everywhere. Give them a chance. That's all they need, an opportunity. And, and of course, and I still think that one of the things that's missing today that we need, and I'll give you another name of a great man. If you don't have the book, go get it. Lloyd Percival's Handbook for Hockey. Great book. I learned so much from that guy. And I had the opportunity to sit with Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay several times. And he worked with the Red Wings, And I said, did you feel, because you guys come from old-fashioned Canadian hockey, if you don't beat them in the alley, you can't beat them, all that. And I said, did you guys appreciate him when he came in and he was teaching you physiology? And he said, not at first. Both of them told me, no, at first, who the hell is this guy? But yeah, it made sense. And Lindsay said, yeah, he made a lot of sense to me. Gordy said the same thing to me, and they respected him. And Tarasov, he was one of Tarasov's teachers. His book was in the break front in Tarasov's living room, the English version. He had it translated, and I said, he said, very good, Lou, very good trainer, coach. Очень хорошо тренер. That's what he told me a few times. Very good coach. And so we can all learn from each other, and nobody should be intimidated. Everybody's opinion should be respected. But if you have a dream or you think something should be some way, don't be afraid to do it. What do you care if they make fun of you? I didn't care. I don't care to this day. Laugh at me all you want. We'll see who laughs last. Do what you think is right and try to improve the game, not make it worse. And I believe strongly, something I don't see, because when I asked these guys who their coaches were, I asked Phil Esposito. I brought him to Italy when I was coaching there, and he came over after he got fired by the Rangers. It was like a dream to him. He said, Lou, you saved my life. It's the first year of my life. can remember. I didn't have a training camp to go to. And here I am in Italy, land of my ancestors, and I'm on the ice with you, getting your team ready for the season. He was great. What a great guy. What a great player. What an unbelievable gift to hockey him and his late brother Tony are and were. And Phil played against the greatest Soviet players, and there was a mutual respect. All those guys told me they didn't have any clue how to stop Esposito. They couldn't stop him. He was too big, like Mario Lemieux. How do you stop guys like that with big shoulders and reach? But Phil said he didn't have a coach when he was a kid. They were just neighborhood guys. That his father set up a deal where he would get a bucket of pucks. Tony had to wear full equipment except skates. He drew a net with duct tape on the garage. He put some overhead lights in. And he said in our snow boots, we'd be out there every day. I'd be shooting balls and Tony'd be making saves. So we got good. And Gordie Howe told me he had no coaches. His cousins, uncles, I think brother or something. He said they'd give you a whack if you made a mistake or did something you shouldn't have done. You learn quick. All those guys learned how to play hockey by playing unstructured hockey. And I did the same, but it was in roller hockey and it was in baseball and that. I remember as a kid, we had no coaches. Mothers were home cleaning house, doing laundry and cooking, and fathers had jobs. And nobody had money, so you made do with whatever you had. And you created things. For whatever sport, we used to choose up sides, figure it all out by ourselves. We had no umpires or linesmen or referees or anything. But what we learned was how to be honorable. We were honorable. We were tough kids in Brooklyn. You had a fight going to school, in school, and coming home from school, and sometimes a fourth one at lunch break. But you learned how to settle everything amongst yourselves in an honorable way. You didn't cheat. You knew if you were offside. You knew if you got a penalty. We'd have a penalty shot or turn the puck over. Or in baseball, the worst arguments ever was settled by a do-over. I wish they do that in roulette. They don't. But you learned as a kid how to make it work, how to be a sportsman. So we got to find a way to put more unstructured free time. I think it'd be good if every hockey program gave the kids 1 hour a week, a bucket of pucks, a medical person, and all coaches and parents go get a coffee down the street or go home. Come and pick your kid up later. And tell the kids, here's the pucks, play, do what you want, figure it out. We'd have more creative players.
It's incredible how much of the day is now structured. So I agree with that. And I think that's one of the nice parts about the ADM doing so many small area games is allowing a little bit of unstructured play in such a ridiculously structured world nowadays that we live in. So well said. And a lot of good.
I'm sorry.
No, after you, sir.
Well, cross ice ADM, beginning kids, 6 years old, rotate the goalies, light equipment, give everybody they're not going to get hurt. Give them little light equipment so it doesn't encumber them. And you could have the rink in 3 zones: defensive, offensive, neutral, cross ice with small nets, lightweight pucks, and put 6 pucks out, 5 pucks out. And just play, kids, play 10 on 10 or whatever. If it was 10 on 20 or 10 in each zone, you'd plenty of room for that. You'd have 60 kids at a time out there playing. Let them score, raise their stick. Let the next guy score. Oh, I want to try being the goalie. Okay, put the equipment on. Whatever. And make it really fun, and it doesn't have to be structured. Look at the goals scored 2 weeks ago. I mean, I've seen similar type of plays like that by players. One from Michigan, one up in Vancouver, I think it was. But anyway, crazy plays where they put the puck on the stick, they come around from behind the net, and then you saw this great young American player, Zegras. My God, is he good. And Sonny Milano, another good player. And he's finally coming into his own. Did you remember that play when he flipped it from behind the net and Sonny batted it in?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I was talking with Mike Bonelli of USA Hockey, and he was talking about how the Zegras family played a lot of, I think it's called floorball, which is kind of a European
Yeah.
game. And all of these
Mhm.
kids that have been playing floorball, you don't need ice, and just how much they are whizzes with the puck and trying all
Oh,
these
yeah.
new things and the creativity. It's absolutely off the charts amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was enthralling. The whole world's talking. I got uh, a text from Yuri Kamanov in Russia. He said, Lou, I'm so excited to see this play. You you guys do what we used to do now. We don't do it anymore in Russia. You guys are doing it in America. But I guarantee you that wasn't from a drill the coach put in. Okay, boys, what we're going to practice now is going behind the net and flipping it over. Uh, I guarantee I never did anything like that, but I always included free play, unstructured free play. Try and do whatever you want, makes you happy, and develop it, do it. In California, roller hockey players, they become very good ice hockey players because their whole life they're skating with a stick and a ball. So they got eye, hand, foot coordination going, those moves. It's like playing softball instead of baseball, with a hardball, a baseball. When I was a kid, we called baseball hardball and softball was softball. But in principle, they're the same game. They're just played differently on different surfaces usually, and also the ball, the size of the ball is different, and some of the techniques. But you still got to swing a bat. You still have to run. You still have to field the ball and throw it. You don't have to have a perfect Yankee Stadium diamond to do that. And the Dominicans prove that. They stand by the sea, they throw pebbles in the air, and they hit them with branches, and all of a sudden, here comes Big Pappy and all these tremendous Dominican players, Pujols and all of them, and they can all hit eye hand. They didn't need fancy equipment to be good. They just needed opportunity and creativity to figure it out.
Absolutely. Well, Lou, this has been absolutely an unbelievable conversation. I love going back into the history of the game and how things have come. And I think that maybe you haven't heard Godfather of USA Hockey, but with all of the stories, Lou Lamoriello, Gordie Howe, working with Herb Brooks, the Olympics, all of that, I think you've probably earned that title. So I would wear it proudly, even if you don't agree.
Nope, I'm just another guy that tried to help make hockey better. And I have to say, we don't have hockey with just Lou Lamoriellos, Herb Brooks, Lou Vairos, Bob Johnsons. We don't have it. We have hockey because of parents, because adults, volunteers, great USA Hockey volunteers. I was one for 16 years. I had more satisfaction doing that than I ever did as an employee. I loved it, and I had nothing but great respect for our volunteers. They do a great job. They really do. Of course, there's a few screwballs once in a while. That happens in anything, but they're pretty good. And parents, I tell coaches, look, don't fight with parents. If you're a parent yourself, coach, you'll do anything for your kid. Nothing. The love of a child is different than the love of a wife or husband or God or parents, teammates. It's different. The love of a child is a very intense, private thing, and parents sometimes act like, I'm sure later on they're ashamed of themselves, but don't hate them for it. Try to understand it's ingrown. It's in you. It's just like you try to steal an egg from a robin nest or a baby. Those little tiny 3-ounce birds will dive bomb and attack and try to kill you, knowing that they're giving up their life. It's an instinctive protective feeling. So find ways to include the parents. Be honest, be forthright, put one in charge of buying a drink after the game for all the players, a soda, give them the money, and let another one keep plus and minus, even if you don't look at it. I don't even believe in it. Another one do face-offs. Get them included. Include them. Don't treat them poorly, and if they misbehave, they'll suffer. Put their kid first, the kid you coach, and don't ever hold it against that kid, what the parent did. Don't. That's cruel. And you're, in many cases, you're a parent yourself, and you know how you feel. Super protective of your child. That's natural. That's just totally natural. So with that, I'll end. I wish you a happy new year, Greg. Keep up the good work on your podcast, and I'm very honored that you would invite me to join you today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lou, for taking the time and coming on and sharing all of your experiences and wisdom from growing this game. And I think I'll speak for a lot of people who probably haven't been able to say it over the years, but just thank you for everything you've done and the contribution and all the people you've gotten involved in the game and growing this. It's, I see you as a godfather of USA hockey myself. So thank you again for everything you've done and continue to do.
You're very welcome.
All right, Lou, take care.
You too. Thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. So before we let you go, though, we'd like to remind you to please like our podcast, subscribe to it, give us a follow, and share this with all the hockey people in your life. We really appreciate growing this community, this podcast. Remember, we also have a newsletter, the Hockey IQ newsletter as well. Really excited to continue to grow this. So please help us grow this further by liking, subscribing, following, and sharing with everyone. So appreciate you all. Take care.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.